Hello and a warm welcome to Federal's special program, Capital Beat. Violence broke out on Sunday after protesters opposed a survey of the local Shahi Jama Masjid conducted by a court appointed advocates commission following a petition claiming that Mughal era mosque was constructed by demolishing a temple at the site. Now, the crowd threw stones and set vehicles on fire, prompting the police to respond with tear gas shells, and the tension that began at 7 a.m. continued for hours, and four people have died in the clashes. They've been identified as Norman, Bilal, Naeem, and Muhammad Kef. Now, what has happened today? Today's developments, if you talk about now, just a day after the clashes, uh, today an FIR has been registered against MP and Samajwadi Party leader Ziaur Rahman Bark and local MLA Iqbal Mahmood son Sohail Iqbal, and the two among six named in seven FIRs which have been filed in connection with the violence. They've been accused of orchestrating violence, mobilizing crowds, and provoking unrest. Now, the officials have said this. Now, the FIR has further fueled a bitter political blame game because Akhilesh Yadav and other opposition parties have accused the Yogi Adityanath government of orchestrating a riot, while the ruling BJP has accused the rivals of fomenting unrest since their defeat in the Lok Sabha polls. Now, how did this entire incident start? What has it led to? And what is the politics behind all of this? Joining me now is Shaira Naeem, who's a veteran journalist and political commentator, joining us from Lucknow. Thank you so much, Shaira ji, for joining. We have Raza Haider, who's a renowned social activist who joins us. Raza, thank you so much for joining. And a senior editor with the Federal, Puneet Nicholas Yadav, joins us. Puneet, thank you so much for joining. And I'll begin with Shaira Naeem ji. Shaira ji, what has really happened? Now the FIR has been registered against the Samajwadi Party MP, and it has been accused that they have fomented the riots. What exactly has happened which has led to the deaths of four people?
Well, if you just see the sequence of events, it's very clear. Without even making any comment, if you just follow the sequence of events, how this petition comes up suddenly out of the blue, and a completely unheard of Indian, judicial history within 2 hours, without hearing the other party, the survey is ordered. So if you and the survey takes place, and in the first attempt, nobody really created any sort of uh, uh, problem. The survey went on, and it was said that the survey is complete. So what was the reason why it was repeated on Sunday is clearly beyond any logical thing. Because if it was on the first day when they said that the survey is complete, why did they do another survey? And that is when the protest started. The point is that in Indian judiciary, where cases go on for years and years, it's completely beyond me of how within 2 hours the administration took action and it ordered this survey. And it seems that the Places of Worship Special Provision Act 1991 is no longer of any value. No, even the lower judiciary, higher judiciary, nobody is taking cognizance of it. So, what can one say? Where is the rule of law? If the country is running with the under the Indian Constitution, under the laws enacted by Parliament, then how does this happen? How can the court ask for a survey? How can it not hear the other party? And how can the administration be so proactive to do it within 2 hours? And now, when it is repeated, that is when the people started protesting. And I think any citizen has a right to protest. And as far as I know, the MP who's been accused, the Samajwadi MP, was not even around in town. So it's very strange how he started this mobilization by remote control. So I would not like to say much. It is only the sequence which of events, if you put it together, it explains the whole scenario. It explains without any comment. You will get to know who was behind it.
Right. But I'll come to Puneet now. Puneet, do you see any correlation with the by-elections which were held in UP for the nine Vidhan Sabha constituencies and what has happened in Sambhal? That they order a survey and the civil court judge orders a survey. The survey is carried out. The lawyer becomes a party to the survey team. And this is all what happens, what we are seeing. And it has ended up in the deaths of 4 people. So do you see any correlation with the by-elections which were held?
Well, thanks, Nilu. Uh, before I before I come to the issue of the bipoles and if there is a correlation, because that at least is a question of conjecture. But let's, I'd like to add something to what Shahira just, recalled, and uh, because that this part is fact, which cannot be denied. Whether they were connected to bipoles or all that, fine, that's all speculation. But let's stick to the facts at the moment. And I'll silver this with a bit of, why we've come to this situation in Sambhal, because that is more important. Now, if you go through the petition that was filed before the local court in the Shahi Jama Masjid case, it is the most laughable petition that you can come across. I'll read a couple of lines from that petition, and that should tell you how, one, it should make you wonder on the judicial wisdom of the court and the presiding judge in the case. And two, on what are the kind of cases that are being, admitted by courts. And three, and most importantly, what is it that the Supreme Court has done to this country and its syncretic traditions by ignoring its own views, its own observations in the Ayodhya judgment. This petition, and again, this is part of a trend of petitions that have followed over the last few years since Ayodhya, where you suddenly have one lawyer, a few locals ganging up together, going and to a court and saying, "Oh, that mosque, there's an old temple that's there underneath," and the court very promptly orders a survey and orders a commission and a survey and all of that. Now, in this case, also similar modus operandi. And even one of the petitioners, Mr. Harishankar Jain, the lawyer in the case and lawyer cum petitioner in the case, is the same lawyer and petitioner who was the lawyer and petitioner in the Gyanvapi case.
Gyanvapi case. Yes.
Exactly the same case. Okay. Now, the petition basically, on what grounds does it ask for a survey? It relies, at least to my understanding, and if I'm wrong, my panelists can correct me, but at least to my understanding, it relies solely on conjecture. It relies solely on misinterpretation. It references theological text and calls it historical fact. Okay? It talks about Hindu scriptures, and I'll give you one line from the petition. It says that this temple was built by Lord Vishwakarma. So, the basic premise here is that there was a Harihar temple that existed at that site. That Harihar temple was demolished in 1527, 1528 by a lieutenant of Babur after Babur invaded India. And then the Muslims took over and built a mosque over there. That is the basic premise. So the petition says that a temple was built at that site by Lord Vishwakarma himself. Lord Vishwakarma himself, at the beginning of the universe. So, to my mind, I would want to ask, at least in the Ayodhya judgment, in the Ayodhya case, the Hindu parties gave references of various travelogues, gave references of various documents to say that this was a site where there was a temple, this was a site where prayers happened, you know, all kinds of documentation was provided. What is provided in this case? Historical scripture, historical references, so-called historical references, which are basically picked up from religious texts, and the claim that this temple was built by God himself. And I mean, there are no historical records that have been provided. Who saw that temple in, prior to 1527? Were there any travelogues? Were there any documentation? Was there any kind of, gazette or any government, even British era document that claimed there was a temple there? None of that has been provided. And you still have the court giving the order for appointment of an advocate commission, which again is very surprising, because if your basic premise of ordering a survey is to look into the archaeological aspect of it and the historical aspect of it, one would assume that that commission would be populated by historians, archaeologists, and not by advocates. So you have an advocate commission that is appointed. Within 2 hours, you have an order. Within, shortly after that, you have the first survey also conducted on the 19th of November. And then the second survey happens. Now, when the second survey happens, when you were giving your introduction to this discussion, you said stones were pelted by the Muslim side. I'm sorry. You also have to add what happened before the stones were pelted or allegedly pelted. When this advocate commission arrived, it arrived with a police armed guard. After that, there is video footage of the cops provoking locals. And please also look at the fact that this is happening in Sambhal. See the scenes from Sambhal, the police's action in Sambhal during the Lok Sabha elections. See the police's action, the police's oppression of the local Muslims during the UP assembly elections in Sambhal. And then, although Sambhal did not have a bypoll right now, but in the other bypolls, so now coming to your point, of the other bypolls that happened, how the police was acting against Muslims, preventing them from going and casting their votes. Yesterday also happened to be a day, and also the day before, when locals from the bypoll-bound constituency, particularly Muslims, were driving down to Lucknow to protest the result and how they were prevented from going and casting their vote. And these people were restrained from entering Lucknow. Now, whether
they were coming with, can I just
Yes, I think
add?
Shaila just wanted to say something. Yeah.
They were coming with affidavits to prove how they were stopped, and they were stopped in Sitapur. Their vehicle was not allowed to proceed further on grounds that the vehicles did not have proper NOCs. Just imagine, this was the
Right.
ground given officially to stop the vehicles midway.
Yes.
They have reached a press conference which Akhilesh was addressing out here.
Right. Yes, Puneet.
Sorry, Puneet, you
yeah,
continue.
so to answer your question on whether there's a link to bypolls or not, I do not know. But then this certainly looks suspicious. But I'll add one more final point before I conclude, and I'm sorry for taking so much of time. But fine, whatever the BJP is doing, what these petitioners are doing, it does not surprise me, to be honest. They're doing something that is part of their strategy, and it's not unprecedented. What surprises me is how the Supreme Court has completely buried its own observations in the Ayodhya case on the specific issue of the Places of Worship Act. And I'll again quote from the Supreme Court's judgment in Ayodhya on what it said about the Places of Worship Act. It said, history and its wrongs shall not be used as an instrument to oppress the present and the future. And I mean, this is very important, because all of this is largely happening in violation, or entirely happening in violation of the PWA. and also the Ancient Monuments Act of 1920. The only redeeming feature of the Ayodhya judgment, and I say this with a sense of disappointment, but I mean, there's no other way of putting it. But I mean, the fact is that the only redeeming feature of that Ayodhya judgment was what it said on the Places of Worship Act. And it said, I am adding to what I had said previously, non-retrogression is a fundamental feature of the foundation, is a fundamental feature of the constitutional principles of which secularism is a core component. The Places of Worship Act is thus a legislative intervention which preserves non-retrogression as an essential feature of our secular values. So, for the last 4 years, the Supreme Court has been sitting on petitions challenging the PWA and then the responses to those petitions. It has not done anything, while local courts have been allowed to create this kind of havoc that has been created in Sambhal or was created in Banaras.
Right.
So,
I'll give to Raza what Puneet and Sharaji have just explained, and Puneet rather explained it at length. That how the civil courts are carrying out this chaos and order, which where Supreme Court has been sitting over it as far as the Places of Worship Act is concerned. Now, do you see all this as a conspiracy against a community which has been seen as a pattern, but now it's getting more and more brazen now that we'll do whatever we do, we'll do it openly and forget the laws. Laws are not there to follow, it seems. Raza, I think you're muted. Yeah.
Thank you, Nilu. The point that Shaira Saiba made and Puneet underlined it very well. I'll go just beyond that. Even the design, as he rightly mentioned, is like pretty old. It's not new. It's like 100-year-old script, which is being rehashed every time. Now, my problem is that every time you cannot fall for the same thing, but there is a human law. It's a law of error or whatever you can call it, that it will happen every time, and hence they try it out every time. So now I'll come to my point. Basically, I'll divide it into two. One is that the design is very much aware. We all are aware. Everybody is aware. The first survey, when it happened, we all know that they came and nobody had any problem with that. Though there was some sort of resentment and some sort of a disappointment, but yet the community said, okay, fine, let it be, because nothing was reported, and they went ahead. And though, as he rightly mentioned, that there was hardly anybody, a historian or an archaeologist within the group. So barring that, when the second time it happened, that's when the critical thing actually moved, because that's the point when you see another sort of design, which is an extension of that. Whereas till that point, it was probably they were just trying that how far we can go. When they saw the opportunity, there was a particular extension, and the moment the extension happened, there were a couple of triggers, which he rightly mentioned, which everybody has now pointed out. It's a video, it's on video evidence, which is like the provocation. Provocation happened from both the groups, the law enforcement agencies as well as the people who went ahead and did the second survey. And that's when the trickiest part, has to be addressed, and that has to be addressed right as the elephant in the room, which is the community got absolutely, organized as if something is going to be lost. Now this mosque is not going to be there. This was the information. The mobilization happened on the premise that this is going to be erased. So a lot of insecurities were being spread. I don't know which part, how it happened, but that's how such a large mobilization happened. And when the provocation from the law enforcement agencies happened, that's the first instance when the resistance came. It wasn't stone pelting, as rightly mentioned by Puneet. It was a resistance like in a normal any protest. Police comes forward, and then the protesters come forward, and there is a slight skirmish. That's a normal thing. That's pretty normal. After that, the the force was used, and the moment the force was used, there was a retaliation. So it's this understanding that we need to have a clearer understanding first. Now, number two, on the community part, how it got mobilized, why it was it resorted to a certain kind of violence, what we saw, why there was a provocation. All of these things are now open to investigation. But I'll come to a point where, especially when any protest or anything is related to minorities, is associated with certain kind of violence, because it's very easier to do that, because certain insecurities always work underground and you make use of that. But there are very good examples of big positive outcomes of protest, which, and shining example is Shahi. But now, coming back to this, what works behind is not only the insecurity part of it, but the youngsters are disillusioned with absolute, the governance, the dispensation. Then they saw the judiciary, then they saw the law enforcement. So now when you see gradually every agency working against you, you tend to lose hope. And it's a complete hopelessness that you see, which results in certain kind of, I'm absolutely anti-violence, I'm a pacifist to the to the core, I'm a part Gandhian, you can say that. But I saw that, and I'm analyzing it on that platform. So I'm saying that this is very, very tricky part. And all the people who are dead are youngsters between the ages of 17 to 25. This we have seen a trend. And this is the part of the community which bears the brunt of it, because they come out, they're emotional, they're not, it is unorganized crowd. There is no clear direction given that what one should do. And secondly, they are losing hope with the judicial system as well. So they tend to take law into their hands. And I'm very seriously saying it, that we need to introspect. Lot of elders of the community, in fact, much of the religious leaders and others whose voices are heard, we are nobody, we are just an outsider. I can have an objective view, but my view will not be taken as seriously. But some people whose objectives, whose talk is taken very positively, they should intervene. Now they should have a clearer policy that this is not the right way. Possibly they could have just sat on the street or whatever, decide your own ways of putting pressure, rather than resorting to this kind of, because we know that design will be this, that some provocation will be there, some push will be there, and then the reaction will be like this. And then 20, 30 odd cases will be filed. It doesn't matter whether MLA or not there. Idea is this, that to teach a larger lesson, so-called lesson, hence bigger names are included every time. So this is what I see as a problem. Now, I've mentioned a little bit of solution. I'm not a social scientist in that sense. I'm an activist. So we work in that thing. Chandrasekhar Azad reached there. I was the first person with the team of with Jignesh and others to reach his village when it got burned long time ago, and we produced the first report on that. And I was just thinking that how much the time has traveled, because he is now trying to reach, and he was stopped. He was not allowed to go there. We were allowed to go there because the things were different, and we could report. We could present a proper report on that incident, and same person is not being now is being stopped. So I'm saying that there are ways and means where we need to actually sit, contemplate, and think that this is the right way, because this formula is now, they've gotten the formula. So whether and then secondly, last part is that officials who are in cahoot of this kind of adjustment or this kind of an arrangement, they should be taken to task. If they are taken to task, probably these things will not happen with such frequency. This is my last submission.
Right. Shairaji, I'll come to you now for the final round of comments to all the three of you. Shairaji, but where is this Hindutva agenda really heading to? The way, I mean, of course, Yogi government is to be blamed for it. There is a pattern in it. The enforcement agencies are in cahoots. Courts are, they look silent, at least, as far as the Places of Worship Act is concerned, and if this is developing a pattern and as a political strategy for the ruling party, where do you see this agenda? How far will they go, and how far can they stretch with this agenda?
Well, uh, first I would like to add one point to what Raza have said, that the youth got provoked and they did this. At least since I was not there on the spot, I had not been able to talk to people. But at least for one person, for my sources tell me, Naeem, he had a samosa shop and he was going to buy provisions for his shop, and he was far away from the Shahi Jama Masjid, and he got shot. So there was, as far as that one case is concerned, he was not an active participant either. It was a crossfire or whatever it was. He died like that. But what you are saying, your basic question, I really can't see what is there ahead of us. It reminds me of a slogan which happened during the Mandir movement, early Mandir movement, that I don't remember the exact words. It was something to the effect that we will not let any mosque or any mazar intact. It was something to that effect. And I see that happening because if if the courts are not taking any cognizance of this major act which Puneet just mentioned, the places of worship. So there is no end to it, and this whole I can see a design in the way the court was working, and if this is replicated, there's just no end to it. There is just no end to it, and the template is pretty, it's been repeated several times. And the most amazing part is that among the dead are Muslims, among the arrested are Muslims, and the houses which will be ultimately demolished despite orders of the Supreme Court are also of Muslims, which we saw in CA and RC. Their houses were demolished, they were had to pay penalty. So from every angle, they are being, kind of cornered to a point where I don't know. Finally, if they retaliate, who can blame them? Who can blame them if the court is not following the rule of law? They expect common citizens to only uphold law. Is that what citizens are expected to do? Single out certain people and expect them to follow the law, and others can are all above law? That
Absolutely.
is my question.
Right, but Puneet, does this episode also look like some kind of a connection between the Cold War, which exists between Yogi Adityanath and Prime Minister Modi? Now, Prime Minister Modi, in his victory speech, had said that "Ek hai to safe hai" is now the Rashtriya mantra, or it becomes like a national slogan where everybody will be talking about "Ek hai to safe hai." And as far as Yogi Adityanath is concerned, he apparently believes in "Katoge to batoge." Now, is this a more brazen and a vulgar display of the politics of Hindutva, what we are seeing? I mean, and Sambhal is just one example.
No, not really, Neelu, because the way Modi has put his slogan out and the way Adityanath put his slogan out, the two slogans may be different. The two leaders may also have differences in their personal ambitions in politics, but ultimately their politics is the same.
True.
And targeting Muslims, demonizing them, villainizing them, oppressing them is part of that politics. So it has nothing to do with the terms between Modi and Yogi. Or at least I don't think so. It's very much part of the wider BJP RSS political strategy towards, or of you know oppressing the Muslim community. So that, yes. In addition to that, what I would say is, see, it's yesterday. I'll you know I had waited till very late in the evening, hoping that somebody in the higher up from the Congress party would say something on this. Akhilesh, of course, made very strong comments and very immediately. But one had expected that the Congress would also react to it with the kind of urgency that is expected in a case like that. And all through yesterday, there was not a pipsqueak from the top leadership of the Congress party. Late in the evening, Pawan Khera, the media chief of the party, did put out a statement, right? It's only today that, this morning ahead of the parliament session, that Priyanka and Rahul both tweeted about it. They've still not spoken public about it. They've only tweeted about it. Okay. So the issue I have with this is we all know what the party in power is doing to the Muslims. With this case and then the Gyanvapi case before that, we've also seen what the courts are doing when it comes to the rights of the Muslims. So, who do the Muslims then expect any kind of succor from, or some protection from? Perhaps these political leaders in the opposition, who they voted for in huge numbers in the Lok Sabha election. And when these leaders, decide to go silent, what else is left with the Muslims?
True.
What is the remedy for them? Who do they go to? I mean, you can't expect a person, a shopkeeper in Sambhal, standing up to Narendra Modi or the entire might of the BJP, whether at the center or in the state. But you do hope that at least the opposition that has come to Lok Sabha this time, let's forget what happened in 14 and 29 and 19, but at least in 24 with very robust numbers. Today, and I'm told that yesterday when the all-party meeting happened to discuss the agenda for the upcoming session, barring the Samajwadi Party and the left, which of course has hardly any stakes in UP, which has been the worst hit of this, by this kind of politics, barring the left and the Samajwadi Party, none of the opposition leaders sought a discussion on what's happened in Sambhal. Even the Congress kept quiet. The Congress even kept quiet on on the demand made by the DMK, the Samajwadi Party, and the left parties on extending the tenure of the Waqf Joint Committee. It's only today that they became co-signatories to that letter, which was submitted to Om Birla. So this politics, or this fear that if we speak up for the Muslims, it's going to help the BJP, polarize it more, is not going to help either these parties in the opposition or the Muslim community.
Absolutely.
And that is the real tragedy here. Not what the BJP is doing. Because
Absolutely.
the BJP is not doing anything that isn't part of its toolkit.
Right. So, Raza, what will you really? I mean, it's unfortunate when you hear things like this, that the opposition parties, also not many of them are ready to stand up for Muslims, to raise issues. And there was an opportunity today, the first day of the parliament. It could have resonated well, but even then, Congress chose not to speak, and other opposition parties also chose not to speak. So, where is all this heading to? And today it is Sambhal. Tomorrow it could be some other place where this pattern is going to be replicated. Now, what is the Muslim community really going to do? And whose mercy will be the Muslim community? I mean, at whose mercy will the community be now? Because the ruling party has disowned. The institutions also don't seem to be standing by the side of the Muslims. So what is the way out now for the Muslims? You'll have to unmute, Raza. You'll have to unmute. Yeah.
Incidentally, some time ago, there was right after the movement of Shahi Jama, people just thought that there could be another, properly organization under some umbrella sort of organization. And let's see that if some social agendas can be taken up. Incidentally, today I got a message from Shahid Siddiqui Sahib in the morning of Nai Dunya fame that said that let's park everything and talk about education. Probably he was no, he had some other his agenda items, and I had received another message by an ex-IPS officer from Lucknow, stating only to work on education for some time. And incidentally, just few months ago, almost like a year ago, I was part of a deliberation where we just thought that let's just work on one agenda, this group, that particular group, only on the education part and having a proper awareness among the community. And it fell through. Of course, nothing of these matters so much. Community is involved in something else. Life, daily, the wages, the other things are so important that you don't get that kind of a support. Only the middle class and the upper middle class Muslims, they do talk about it, and certain well-meaning individuals and liberals and others and leftists. So, but coming to the point that where it can lead to is that certain bit of, now that we know that design will exist and the design will carry on, what can we do? We know that many of the like rightly underlined, none of these bigger political parties will come on board thinking that they will have they'll polarize other part, whatever. I don't want to go into the detail of that, but if at all we look at the society, so I'll cite a small thing to understand. And so when the PWA Act was, it was created with certain very, a larger understanding, and a very well-meaning individuals were behind it. How important it is just to cite and we are going to have, we are moving towards a Hindu Pakistan or whatever you can call it, largely quote unquote. It's a far-fetched thing, but nevertheless, we are moving towards that. So in the Blasphemy Act of Pakistan, when it was being revisited, one of the principal lawyer there cited PWA, said that how easy it is to have discussion, and you can bring legislation which are related to religion if the understanding is like this. But what happened in Pakistan, the Blasphemy Act got extended. It was extended to all over the country. Similarly, this law has been studied, that how we can differentiate between the past and the present and the future. Incidentally, I agree with Puneet, correct. Out of the 540 pages, this is probably the only saving grace. This couple of lines are the saving grace out of that judgment. I would say that. And right now, we need to be very, very cautious that this thing or similar stuff, maybe at a smaller skirmishes level and a larger riot level, all these designs will exist. I'm saying, and I'm telling you with proper honesty and understanding, that these things will recur. We are talking of this. 6 months ago, we were talking of something else. 6 months down the line, we'll be talking about something else. I'm saying, to put a stop, we need to think in both, in a 360 degrees. One is that what is the legal recourse available, how we can address that. Even if we are losing, some bit of hope among lower judiciary, then can we go to the higher judiciary? Can we appeal it, reappeal, whatever? That's the focus area. Secondly, that community level dialogue has been broken for last 10 years. Probably the youngsters of the age between, say, 20 to 35, they are getting alienated among the areas where they live. So I've seen that the social cohesion, the way I was brought up, barring a couple of Muslim friends, I do not have Muslim friends. And they're I'm from Lucknow, so you can imagine that they are family friends. I have done, for my friend's sister, I have done the ritual of Kanyadan, because he was not found. Ajay was not found around. So uncle held my hand and said, "Ki ye karega." And my Panditji got surprised again. What is this? So that was the Lucknow. That was where we were. That's impossible right now. Impossible. People do not, you don't see it, but I'm seeing it from a different perspective. That right now I live in Noida, and I hardly see that, barring our kind of interaction in a lower middle class and lower class in there's hardly any interaction between the communities. So it's completely got broken down. There's suspicion. There is some bit of thing that, oh, no, no, we want to, and there is a sense that we must, say whatever we have got. It should be expandable. It should be, rather than becoming exclusionary, we should be more inclusive. That's the point. But I'm talking of very softer approach right now when we are in the throes of these killings and riots and everything. I think when it's a peacetime, that's when we should sit and think through. Social scientists, activists, administrators, political activists, they ought to be on the same platform. Else, this thing will get repeated hundred of times and end result will be the same.
Absolutely. And this seems to be a big challenge. And to what level will this Hindu Muslim agenda go? And sometimes people wonder that if this is at all used as a diversionary tactics, to move away from the fundamental issues. All this is there, but how long can this continue is something to be seen. I'll have to end it here. Thank you so much, Raza, Heather, Shaira ji, Puneet. It was wonderful having all of you on the program. And one appeal to the viewers who are watching this discussion, subscribe to our channel, send us a feedback, and stay tuned to The Federal.